Good afternoon, good morning. Today we're going to be talking about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So I'm Jake McSheffrey. I'm the Business Projects Manager for Project Solutions. We're the DBE supportive services provider for North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. And today, like I said, we're going to be talking about this Investment Act. So we're going to basically be going over what this act is, why it's really important, talk a little bit about the history of it and why it matters to you. And then we're going to move into different strategies and opportunities that exist for DBE firms and small businesses in general, and what you can do to capitalize on all the projects and all the funding that's coming down. So we're going to go over an introduction, like I said, just basically talking about what is the bill, what does it consist of, going into some of the key provisions. We're going to look at a breakdown state by state. So we're going to look at North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, to kind of help emphasize what each state is getting in funding and what the target areas are. We're going to look at ample opportunities for DBEs to get involved, and what opportunities are actually available for you, and ways that you can capitalize on the funding, certain strategies, things that you can be doing now or employing in the future so that you can definitely get more projects and get more involved in this and really have a bird's eye view of what's going on and what's coming down the pipeline. And then we'll do a summary wrap up, and if anybody has any questions, you can ask those. You don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. Throw them in the chat. Doesn't matter. Interrupt me. There's no problem with it. We can answer the questions as they come. So let's begin by talking about the bill itself. On November 15th, 2021, President Biden signed the momentous Bipartisan Infrastructure Law authorizing an additional $550 billion, which totals a $1.2 trillion federal investment into America's infrastructure. So this bill has actually received support from both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, making it a rare example of bipartisan cooperation in a pretty much always politically divided environment. So that's where the word bipartisan comes out. This has support from both sides, which already tells you how important it is that everybody's in full agreement about this, the necessity of this and what it entails. So before we dive into the details of the bill or the law now, it's important to take a quick look at where we're actually coming from. So the government attempts to pass multi-year transportation authorizations that covers all types of transportation modes. So air, sea, ground, rail, water, it doesn't matter what it is. For surface transportation in particular, Congress last passed a 5-year authorization in 2015 called Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, otherwise known as the FAST Act. The law provided long-term funding for surface transportation infrastructure planning and investment, and it authorized $305 billion over 5 years. So that was passed in 2015. Fast forward 5 years to 2020, Congress extended this law to 2021 because they were unable to reach an agreement on a reauthorization strategy. And then in 2021, when it came up again, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee approved reauthorization via the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act, also known as the STRA. The reason I'm telling you this is because the STRA is what became the current bipartisan infrastructure law. And it's pretty unique because it provides a significant percentage of its funding through formula grants and reduces restrictions and spending that were previously in place with the FAST Act. So I want to quickly touch on grants because it's important to understand the difference between a formula grant and a discretionary grant, because they are different. Formula grants are non-competitive and they're set by legislation and regulations. So funds must be awarded in accordance with that formula. On the opposite side, discretionary grants, they are competitive grants. And so an organization or an individual, such as a DOT, has to complete an application, and it's a competitive review and selection process. So since these are formula grants, that essentially means that more state projects are guaranteed to be funded. So the STRA became the bipartisan bill, which became the bipartisan law on November 15th, 2021. And it encompasses several key provisions, including transportation, public transport, safety, passenger freight rail, electric vehicle infrastructure, broadband internet capability, clean energy, improvements to water systems, capabilities, and facilities. And these are just to name a few. The big point here is that the bill is massively diverse. And one point of contention that's worth mentioning with the bill is the actual allocation of spending in regard to building new or repairing. There's always a focus on building because having shiny new things is nice and people love ribbon cutting ceremonies. So new roads and bridges are visible manifestations of the work that the money is put into the projects, whereas repairs are more hidden. In fact, with maintenance, usually it causes a lot of frustration and prompts public discourse. And after the repairs, a road repair or an intersection repair are complete, people tend to complain about how it didn't help or it took too long. So politicians and decision makers, they tend to prefer to focus on new projects. However, as areas grow in population, South Dakota, North Dakota, these kind of typically rural areas are seeing an increase in population. There's a lot to be said for expanding the capacity of the existing infrastructure. And this is an area where government officials and legislators disagree a bit. So let's further break down the funding. Here are some of the top areas of investment within the program. And note that we're talking about billions, not millions. So road, bridges, and major projects, and this is going to be the big one we talk about today, it's $110 billion. Public transit, 89.9 billion. Electric vehicles and buses, 15 billion. Environmental remediation, power infrastructure, 86 billion. Transportation safety, 11 billion. Passenger freight rail, 66 billion. Airports, ports, waterways, 42 billion. Drinking water, $55 billion. So there's a lot of federal investment spending that's happening here. Subsequently, this bill will obviously create millions of jobs across various sectors, including construction, engineering, and manufacturing. The bill's provision on transportation and water infrastructure specifically will improve public safety by repairing and upgrading aging infrastructure and reducing the risk of accidents and disasters. Now, this is especially important in rural communities where emergency services vehicles rely on a single road or a single bridge to traverse to wherever the emergency is located. The investment will focus on the repair and maintenance and rebuilding of roads and bridges with the focus on climate change mitigation, resilience, equity, and safety for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians alike. So from spurring economic growth to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the unprecedented advantages of the bill cannot be overstated. Federal investment in public transit specifically. As previously highlighted, the bill allocates $110 billion in new funds towards road, bridge, and other major transportation development projects over 5 years, marking it as the largest federal investment in public transit ever recorded. The investment targets the repair and modernization of more than 173,000 miles of highway and 45,000 bridges nationwide. And additionally, the bill is also the largest bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway system, which is otherwise known as the Federal Highway Act of 1956, which was signed by President Eisenhower. So admittedly, it may not be the most exciting history, but this infrastructure bill is actually history in the making. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at the Bridge Development Program. So the Bridge Investment Program, otherwise known as the BIP, the government loves their acronyms, so you're going to see everything has an acronym attached to it. This allocates $3 billion over 5 years towards bridge infrastructure, repair, and modernization. The BIP provides grants to improve bridges that are considered in poor condition and fair condition at the risk of falling into poor condition, that do not meet geometric design standards, and that cannot meet the load and traffic requirements of the regional transportation network. So bridges that aren't up to par with in terms of regulations and modern day requirements. Additionally, there's roughly $40 million set aside each fiscal year for tribal transportation facility bridges, which is administered by the Tribal Transportation Program. And lastly, each state DOT awards 3 different types of grants for projects. We talked before about formula and discretionary grants and the difference between them being competitive or non-competitive. These are discretionary or competitive grants coming from the state DOT. So the first category is large projects. So large projects are considered greater than $100 million. And total of these projects cannot exceed 50% of the total award that the DOT can distribute for the bridge program. Other than large projects is lesser than or equal to $100 million. And these in total cannot exceed 80% of all the funding the DOT can distribute for the bridge program. And the last grant is a planning grant. It involves the planning, feasibility, analysis, and revenue forecasting for a project that would be eligible for the Bridge Investment Program. And there's no limit or statutory cap on what that consists of. The bill also focuses on improvements within Native American communities as well. So Division A, Title IV of the bill is called Indian Affairs, and it discusses the $270 million Bureau of Indian Affairs, or BIA, road maintenance program. And so the point of this program is that it involves consultation with tribal leadership, studies and recommendations for road improvements, as well as financial, technical, and legal assistance to evaluate potential projects. The big thing here is that this is government involvement in assisting with the tribal transportation program in developing these communities. So the bill addresses specifically the tribal transportation program and allocates $3 billion in support of that as well. Again, billion, not millions. And that's a major, major difference. The purpose of this program is to provide safe and adequate transportation and public road access to and within Indian reservations and lands. And there are some set-asides worth mentioning that are deducted prior to distributing tribal transportation program funds, and these get deducted every fiscal year. So 5% is deducted for program administration, including funding the tribal technical assistance centers. 2% is deducted for tribal planning, which is just going to go into transportation planning measures. 4% is deducted for tribal safety projects, and it's allocated to applicant tribal governments for highway safety improvement projects. For tribal high priority projects, these are also called THPPs, $9 million every fiscal year will be set aside to carry out these high priority projects. And the last one, supplemental funding, this is kind of a catch-all. Each fiscal year, $82.5 million will be allocated towards supplemental funding. And one other note here is that in fiscal years where the total tribal transportation program funding exceeds $275 million, there's an additional 12.5% funding allocated on top of the 82.5. All of this funding is distributed through the Bureau of Indian Affairs regions based on cumulative tribal shares in each region, and then it is further distributed to the specific tribes within each region. Ultimately, what all of this is saying is that the $3 billion will cover a few additional program requirements in addition to funding the tribal transportation program. But all the money is devoted and guaranteed to go towards tribal organizations and their development. So I know I've thrown a lot of numbers, a lot of dollar signs, a lot of different programs, and even some history at you. But the important takeaway is that the bill is a really, really big deal. There's a lot of moving money and a lot of project plans to improve the country. So, naturally, that means there's a lot of opportunities for DBEs and small businesses to get involved and capitalize on that. So we looked at the big overall picture. Let's zoom in a little bit more and take a specific look at information applicable to you and the areas that we live in. So this is a breakdown by the state. So we'll start with South Dakota and kind of go across the board there. So in South Dakota alone, there's 1,038 bridges that are considered in poor condition. There's 2,031 miles of highway that are considered in poor condition. There's been a 1.2% increase in commute times over the past decade, and an average annual driver cost of $562 a year due to driving on roads that need repairs. And so South Dakota is estimated to receive $2.2 billion in federal funding for highways and bridges, which is a 27.1% increase from the standard funding they get from the government. Over to North Dakota, in poor condition, there's 444 bridges, 830 miles of highway. There's been a 9.9% increase in commute times over the past decade, and an average annual driver cost of $410 per year due to driving on roads that need repair. And North Dakota is expected to receive $1.9 billion in federal funding, which is a pretty large 31.8% increase. And then lastly, Nebraska. Nebraska takes the cake for bridges. They have 1,302 bridges that are considered in poor condition, 1,125 miles of highway. There's been a 6.6% increase in commute time and an average annual driver cost of $461 a year because of driving on roads needing repair. Nebraska is also expected to receive $2.2 billion in federal funding for highways and bridges, which is a 30.7% increase from the standard funding. So you can see the large increase from standard federal assistance, 27%, 32%, 31%. Those are massive percentages. You don't typically see something that drastic just like that. We went from 1 year, it was, maybe 15%. Next year is 27%. We're doubling our numbers, which is pretty astronomical. Remember, this funding is going to take place over 5 years. And then at the end of 2026, Congress will conduct another transportation authorization review, and they'll make a decision about what the next step is. So that could either mean extending this law or drafting a new bill entirely. So every dollar of funding is an opportunity for DBE's working highway construction projects, which means there are literally billions of reasons why this information should matter to you specifically. There's ample opportunity for DBE firms and other small businesses to take advantage of transportation projects that this bill is going to propose. To further highlight that, the federal government continues to stress the importance of remedying discrimination and balancing disproportionality within the transportation industry. Congress specifically states, discrimination and related barriers continue to pose significant obstacles for minority and women-owned businesses seeking to do business in federally assisted surface transportation markets across the United States. There's a reason why so many of these federal programs exist, like the Women-Owned Small Business Program, the Minority Business Enterprise, the Native American-Owned Business Program, or the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. These programs exist to enrich these industries with different perspectives and skill sets. And the government recognizes that. Furthermore, the bill also reads that 10% of the amounts made available for transit projects will be expended through small business concerns owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So consequently, $50 million will be allotted via state grants to the DBE program between fiscal years 2022 and 2026, further highlighting the opportunities that exist for DBE firms to take advantage of. So this is actually in the bill. It specifically talks about DBEs. One thing to note is that the DBE program, although it is a federal program, it's managed through the state. So when you're looking at the federal level, they're not going to be talking about DBE specifically because that is managed through each state DOT. So some sort of like the SBA 8A program, that is a federal program. And some of the resources we're going to look at a little bit later on, you'll see what I mean by that. The federal government will talk about the 8A program and some other small business certifications, but they won't talk about DBE because it's run by the state. So it's a pretty big deal that they're talking about DBE in this bill and they're actually allocating $50 million to it. So before we get into how DBEs can capitalize on the funding, let's take a quick look at some of the challenges that are facing the construction industry today. I'm sure all of you are feeling this in some regard. Labor shortage. Even before COVID, the number of construction workers in the industry has been gradually declining since the 2008 recession. And there are currently over 400,000 open construction jobs in the US. Subsequently, this results in project delays or even the inability to take a project due to staffing concerns. The next one is unavailability of equipment and parts. So contractors continue to state their concerns for the availability of tools and parts. Supply sources and chains have been majorly impacted by COVID. This is especially true in vehicles and parts that require semiconductor chips, which have become scarce since the pandemic as well. And obviously, companies cannot function properly without the proper tools and equipment to do the job. And the last one is increased cost. So because of the lack of supply and the damage that's hit supply chains in general, the equipment and parts that are actually available are significantly more expensive. And this is especially true in the trucking industry when it comes to maintenance and repairs of trucks as well. In turn, this increases job projections and jeopardizes a small company's ability to win bids. So how can DBE firms capitalize on the infrastructure bill funding? We're going to take a look at these 5 tactics that you can employ now to ready your firm for future projects. Remember, the bill was signed back in 2021, so we're already in the midst of the funding. So the more you delay these important functions, the less time you're actually going to have to capitalize on the bill. We don't know what it's going to look like in 5 years. They could extend this one. There could be more opportunities, or there could be an economic shift or in the political climate or the world in general, and we could shift our funding towards something else and not focus as much on infrastructure in the country. So it's important to take advantage while the opportunity exists. So we're going to look at leveraging your network, reviewing your financials, optimizing your company's strategic plan, promoting your company, and understanding what resources are available to you. Some of this stuff may seem simple, may seem like kind of intuitive. Naturally, you would do these things. But really, what we're going to look at is, are you actually employing them? And are you doing them the most effective way that you're actually seeing results from your efforts? So the first one, leveraging your network. The contents of the bill are super confusing. I'm going to be honest. I do not advise anybody trying to read the infrastructure bill cover to cover. It's over 2,700 pages of convoluted government text. So you may not have the time to sort through and understand all the provisions, but there are plenty in your business market that do. Plenty of people in your industry, in your networking circles that do understand this or know more about it. So lean into those relationships that you have with mentors, prime contractors, lawyers, bankers, other industry professionals, and glean what opportunities exist and how your firm specifically can take advantage of the work. Also, reach out to the SBA, Apex accelerators, local small business development centers, and companies like ours, Project Solutions. We are here to help as well. There are definitely tons of resources available to help point you in the right direction, some of which are completely free. So don't get stuck in your own bubble. Don't try to figure this out all by yourself. Take advantage of what's available to you. That's how you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a competitive edge against people who aren't taking advantage of those resources. And start the conversation and never hesitate to ask questions. Talk about it. Talk about it to these big contractors. Talk about it to people who are major influences in the industry. They're going to be heavily involved in this, and they may have more information about projects or different things that are coming down the line that you can get involved with. Number 2 is to review your financials. So there's no better time to take a look at your own numbers and how you account for your firm's financial performance. So start simply enough by identifying and understanding some of these basic accounting principles. Which type of accounting method does your firm utilize? Are you even aware of that there are different types of accounting principles? So standard accounting or project-based accounting. Standard accounting is best suited for more suppliers, for businesses that sell goods and conduct business in a fixed location. And the reason that is because the variance in labor and payroll is much simpler. Profitability, break-evens, they're all forecasted based on a fixed understanding of income and expenses. You know what's going to come because you know how much your products sell for. Project-based accounting is far more diverse and complex because it pertains to specific jobs. Tax laws may vary across state lines and municipalities, and profitability is specifically based on the job. It's uniquely job-focused. Also, how does your firm account for revenue? Do you use cash accounting or accrual accounting? Cash accounting recognizes revenue when the cash is actually received. So that means if you sell a product and you say, here's this hammer, and somebody says, here's the money, boom, cash is received, you account for it right there. Whereas with project-based work, they tend to focus better on accrual accounting, which means we completed the work, but we haven't been paid yet. But we're going to account for that revenue because the work is completed, and that helps us kind of understand our financial portfolio and our perspectives and helps us bid on future projects. The money doesn't get exchanged right away, so depending on your business model, one of these may be more applicable. And like I said, with job-based work, accrual accounting is a more accurate determination because it provides a clear visibility of the current financial state despite changing payment timelines. And then job costing. Anybody who's ever talked to me personally or has attended any of my presentations, job costing I live and breathe job costing. It's perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in business management, and it's just so critically important. So job costing is a firm's deep dive into cost allocation and forecasting. So incorporating real-time job costing will allow you to keep score and better identify how your business operates from a financial perspective. So in turn, this will augment your capability to determine more competitive bids. In another line of work, it's all about bidding. It's all about putting together the most accurate bid that's going to help you win, but also keep your business profitable. One effective strategy to job costing that you can kind of incorporate is to be meticulous in data accumulation while on the job site during the contract. You should be capturing information about timelines, costs, networking, individuals you talk to, work technicalities, all these types of things. Should be capturing them all in a database. Write things down. Keep track of them all. Having this information will help you determine future job costs as well as establish benchmarks for performance. Now, number 3, optimizing your company's strategic planning. Now is the time to look at your firm's strategies and processes and find ways of turning unexpected opportunities into real results. So by taking the time to evaluate these critical elements and facets of your business and your operations, you can better prepare yourself for the opportunities created by the bill. We can go into that a little bit more specifically. The first step to doing this is you need to identify what elements of your business need to be improved. So here are just some examples of areas to review, but you're going to need to conduct a self-analysis to prioritize what's actually going to be beneficial for your firm. First one is to identify shifts in your market and customers' needs. So we know there's been an increase in transportation projects, and how can your business play into that? I spoke before about building new projects tends to be a higher concern than just standard maintenance and repairs. So how does your work factor into new builds versus maintenance and repair? Are you going to be involved in both? Can you make more money off of a new build versus a repair? Depending on what your work component is, one may cater towards the other. So you want to understand that and know what opportunities you should be seeking. Number 2 is to reassess your organization's products, services, and supporting technology. So what other services can you perform? Say you're a trucking company, but you also live on a farm and you're used to putting up fencing and, repairing your fencing. Well, maybe there's some sort of fencing opportunities you have with erosion control and with landscaping that you could be breaking into. If you're already doing it in your home life, maybe you can incorporate it into your business. So take a look at different ways that your business can grow and what other jobs you can do. Additionally, what other technology or AI can help automate your work and open up more free time for you to focus your efforts elsewhere. Number 3, review job costing practices and conduct a cost-benefit analysis. So perfecting your job costing strategy so you're ready to execute when it comes time for bids, it's important. That's all. I can just say it's all blue in the face, but job costing is super important. If you're not allocating project costs in the most efficient manner, your bids may be too high. So if you're struggling to win bids or you're not understanding how other companies are bidding so low, this is probably where your focus should be. Establish the required funding relevant for your organizational growth. So you've heard the saying before, you have to spend money to make money. Identify areas of your business that may need to be developed in order to produce more revenue. So this could be increasing your warehouse space, preventative equipment repairs or vehicle repairs, maybe website design or marketing. Increasing that portion of your business could help bring in more revenue. But all of this costs money. So you have to understand where do you want to spend your money that it's actually going to be useful. Prioritize management principles and outline the road to success. I think this one is really tough, especially for small businesses, because it kind of incorporates how well are you leading your team? Are you managing your time and resources to yield the highest efficiency? Have you ever really taken the time to consider, your day-to-day and what you're doing or using your time to your best advantage? Because if you're trying to do all the day-to-day work, who's focused on your company strategy, direction, and growth? If you're doing the books and you're hiring the staff and you're driving the truck and you're stocking the shelves and you're paving the roads or you're installing the silt fencing, you're taking time away from your most important job, which is owning and managing your company. Now, obviously, I understand small companies don't have the luxury of a large staff to do all this stuff, but take a beat to ensure you're maximizing your most valuable resource, which is your time. You want to spend it doing the things that are going to yield the most results. Identify alternate approaches to manufacturing, sourcing, and supply chains. So we discussed a little bit earlier, supply being a lingering issue in the industry. I will say that supply chains are on the mend since COVID, but you should still continue to shop all available sources and build relationships with your vendors. You may be able to negotiate discounts in exchange for loyalty or sole sourcing. I can't state enough how important it is to maintain these relationships. Get to know your vendors and get to know their struggles. What are they struggling with? And let them know what you're struggling with. Let them know your concerns about pricing, about the future, about sourcing, things of that nature. Because business is business, but humans are humans. There may be more flexibility than you think, and that starts with the fundamental part of just getting to know the person on the other end of the phone. Any face-to-face interactions you can do, things like that, that helps build that relationship, and it opens up more opportunities that really wouldn't be there if it's just a simple business transaction. Lastly, determine the talent needs. So how do you recruit and retain talent? This should be a focus because finding and keeping qualified personnel continue to be one of the biggest challenges that all companies in every industry face. You got to be creative with your incentives and remember that most people, the important factor isn't necessarily money, it's time, a work-life balance, and intrinsic motivation. So you need to make sure that your team feels they are valued and cared for because that's what keeps people. I want to talk real quick about a study that I saw. This is also a TED Talk, so you may have seen this, but it basically was a study to determine the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic is something that you feel inside, and that's how you get motivated. Extrinsic is an external factor, like more money, more time off, things like that. And what they basically did was they put a bunch of people in a room and they said, solve this puzzle. You have to use your brain. You have to problem solve this puzzle. If you can solve it in a certain amount of time, we'll give you more money. And then with the other test group, they said, okay, solve this problem, work together. And they didn't talk about more money. And 100% of the time in all the studies they did, 10 out of 10 times, when they offered more money, the people in that trial group always solved it slower than the other group. And they did more research to this and realized that when you motivate people with money or external factors, it doesn't really work. Versus if you motivate them like, hey, work as a team. You all have something valuable to add in, work together, and drive forward. 10 out of 10 times, that helps. So the conclusion of the study was that if you are working a job where you're going to have to face problems and obstacles and problem solve and critically think and think creatively, extrinsic motivators like more money don't tend to actually help. In a lot of situations, they can actually just get in the way. So keep that in mind. When you're trying to retain people, just throwing money at the problem, it doesn't always work. The people want to feel that they matter. If they don't show up to work, it's going to affect the work. And that's more so than just, oh, you're my only driver. If you don't show up, I can't do the job. It's more like, hey, I need your skill sets. I need your capabilities. You're important to me. You're important to this team. That's incredibly important towards of keeping people. So when you talk about the war on talent and not being able to keep people, that's a big factor. Promoting your company. So this is another major factor. And I understand that the nature of the DBE program is that primes actually come to you and solicit your firm for bids, but that doesn't mean you don't have to promote your organization. Effective marketing and strong follow through will have primes specifically reaching out to your firm versus all the companies that perform your labor component. In fact, with strong communication, accurate submittals, and a consistent product, a prime may even choose your company even if you have a higher bid than others because they understand the quality of work they're getting. And I just, foot stomp again, remember the power of healthy relationships. So research. It's true what they say, knowledge is power. Proper research can completely change how successful a business is. So the first thing is you want to stay engaged and stay informed. The more interaction you can get with your customers and industry professionals, the higher chance you have to glean their desires. So subscribe to applicable industry journals and newsletters. Actively seek training events, networking events, conferences, webinars such as this related to your field. Identify your brand, shake a lot of hands, and ask a lot of questions. You want people to know who you are. That face-to-face value is critically important. Ask yourself these two questions. Who is your customer and what do they value? You need to learn what is valuable to sell, no matter what kind of business you actually own. For example, there could be 100 landscaping options for a prime to choose. So is that what's super valuable, that your company can perform a landscaping function? Probably not, because there's a lot of competition. So what is truly valuable? Is your customer truly looking for reliability? They're looking for reliability in their firm, or the ability to get the job completed in a time crunch to possibly avoid late penalty fees from the state? Are they looking for responsiveness? So you want to find the common struggles. What is the number one struggle that these firms or these prime contractors are having, and market yourself as the solution? Hey, I will respond to you. Hey, I will get my submittals done accurately, and let me show you, let me prove it to you. That's going to help make your brand stand out and get more work. And then leverage your competition. We talked earlier about leveraging your network. However, perhaps the best research you can do is actually into your competition. So visit their website, review their capability statements, and see how they market themselves. What are they offering that you're not offering? Ask contractors which DBs they prefer to work with and why. Engage with your competition and put yourself in a position where you can learn. One of my favorite sayings is that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. We're always trying to grow. We're always trying to learn new, and you can get a lot of that from your competitors. And then mapping your reach. This is another really big one. Talked again about that your time, most precious resource. And as such, you want to have it properly spent in business development. We want to make sure that your marketing, your business development is effective and it's actually yielding results. So the first thing we want to do is identify a practical working distance. So where should you focus your efforts in terms of marketing and work? You're going to identify a reasonable distance that your firm should market to. So if you're a project-based company, how far are you willing and able to transport your personnel and equipment to remain profitable? Determine that distance and draw a radius on a map. So you'll get a nice circle on a map that this is where I'm willing to operate in. And then take a look at that. Does it cross into different districts, municipalities? Does it cross state lines? Because if it does cross a state line, you should be DBE certified in that state as well. Once you know the geographic determination of where you're able to perform the work, that's when you want to get in touch with the right people in that area. So contacting agencies, seek out transportation departments, government agencies, local contractors, anyone who may be involved in contracting the work for your industry. Let them know who you are, what your capabilities are, and why you should be their first choice when seeking that labor component. Any events or conferences that are either in that area or will be attended by influential people in that area should also be your focus. I think with DBs, we tend to kind of just get hunkered down because we know the work's going to come to us. We're going to get the emails. We're going to get the solicitations. So the more you go get out in front of it and put yourself out there, make yourself known, the more likely that, yes, everyone's going to get solicited, but you're going to get picked over time and time again. And marketing is your best ally in establishing trust and credibility with your clients. So everything associated with your marketing needs to be pristine and professional. Dated aesthetics, tacky designs, grammatical errors, they present like disorganized, rudimentary, and sometimes even a sketchy persona of your company. So if you're not great with marketing, it's worth the investment to put money into somebody who is. Unfortunately, books do get judged by their cover, so you need to make sure that yours is perfect. And present yourself professionally. You're trying to establish your indisputable professionalism and ability as a DBE firm. So always look at your marketing materials from your client's perspective. Your aim should be to impress them. So tailor your resume, your website, your capability statements to focus on your strengths so that a customer knows exactly what you're all about. You don't have to be a Fortune 500 company, but you want to act like one. Your client needs to feel that your business is the most important thing to you and that you're not going to let them down. That's a big thing that primes want to see. They want to know that. They want to know that this person is, their blood, sweat, and tears is going into the business and that they're going to get it done and they're going to get it done right. That's how you get picked up more and more and more. And then establishing that reliability, that's how you can increase your price a little bit and people will pay for that quality. Maintain a professionalism during construction. So if your website is in development, or even if you don't have one and you're just setting it up, you don't want to just have either no website or just a crash. You don't want to go to your website and just have it be a working page that doesn't say anything. Replace it with a professional coming soon a page. Have a banner that says working, under construction, something creative that relates to the construction industry, but still have that contact information, quick capability of what you do, contact information. One of the biggest things is people want to see websites. When they look up your firm and they're really considering hiring you, they're going to go to a website. There's no website. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could be bad image. And if they do go to your website and it's awful, it makes your company not look so great. So you always want to keep that professionalism. And then be the SME. So one of the best ways you can establish trust and credibility for your organization is to present yourself as the subject matter expert. So seek out opportunities to teach and educate others, include mentorship on your website via YouTube videos, share articles on your social media, post about industry trends, and look at getting involved in training events. So even setting up in a booth, an exhibitor booth at an event or giving a presentation, if people can see you and say, oh, that individual, they know everything about insert whatever it is, then when they're seeking that labor component, they're going to remember you. And the last part is feedback. So take advantage of the contracts that you do have while you have them to learn more about the contractor and their needs. Ask for a review of quotes. Like I said before, ask which firms they prefer to work with and why. If you have a great experience with a contractor, ask for a letter of recommendation. Building and maintaining these relationships will pay off when the contractor needs it to solicit your labor component again. And reputation is everything for a small business. So capitalize on any opportunity you have to promote and demonstrate your worth. And the other piece I'll mention here is don't expect the contractor necessarily to remember you or reach out to you directly. put a reminder on your computer, on your phone, or calendar to call them and check in. And this could be monthly, every 6 months, whatever you deem as an acceptable time frame. But let them know you really appreciate the opportunity to work on the last project and the experience you gained. Tell them you love the opportunity to work with them again in the future. And tend to these relationships, because when you do this with your vendors and you do this with your mentors and your primes and all these people, that just helps solidify more work and more stability in your career. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is knowing your resources. So take the time to conduct your own research under the bill. Like I said, I don't recommend reading it, but there may be certain portions, like on the federal investment in transit, that may be interesting to you. And one such resource that is available is the Procurement Opportunity Forecasts on the U.S. Department of Transportation website. So we're actually going to take a look at that right now. I just kind of want to show you what that actually looks like. Second here. Okay, now, so the thing about this website in particular is that it's kind of a 30,000-foot overview, procurement opportunity forecast. You can see it's on the US DOT, not a state DOT. So it's pretty big level, but there are some interesting things you can find. So here you talk about competition type. You don't have to select these, but like I said, 8A is here. Hub zone. One thing you're not going to find here is DBE, because DBE is not a federal program. So to work this site, say you want to look at federal highway projects related to construction, and let's say in the first quarter. We'll download this, and this may not be helpful daily to look at day in, day out, but as you go through, it's helpful to kind of know some of these things, and you can actually, bring it up to a prime contractor and say, hey, you know anything about this? So you pull this spreadsheet, and let's say we look at North Dakota. All right, oops. And write so I think I may have pulled a little bit too much information here, but okay, so here we go. It was just there. All right, so here we go. So you see how this says, that's New Mexico. North Dakota. Okay. So you kind of go over here, you see that it's a project that's in North Dakota. This is talking about what the competition is. So if it's an 8A or whatever, so it's just to be determined. It's a $10 million contract. It's related to construction. It actually gives you the information about South Unix seating loop slide repair. It'll give you contact information. So it tells you Joe Wilson and here's his government email, here's his phone number. So if you're, particularly looking for a project or a contact information, this will provide all that to you. So you can basically search this by state. Some of the searching here does get a little confusing because it doesn't break it down super nice for you, but you can see like this would be a Utah, Alaska, Idaho, Washington. So you can find, this one's New Mexico. So you can find your state, find what options are coming down the line, and then you can bring this up to a prime contractor and say, hey, do you know anything about this national park project or anything about this, project that's coming down the line? How can I get involved? And your prime contractors or your government officials, they may know more about it and be able to provide that opportunity to you. Okay, so go back to this presentation here. All right, so here's some additional resources that are available. So the first one here, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Map. If you go to this link, and you'll all get a copy of this presentation, so you'll have access to all these links and everything. If you actually go to that link, it will give you a live interactive map that will show you all the announced and awarded bipartisan infrastructure law projects that are broken down by different departments. So you can search DOT and you can go into specific programs. So if you want to go into the bridge program, you can select that and see all the bridge projects that are in your state, surface transportation projects, highway construction projects. So you can actually search it specifically, and you can click on it and it'll tell you how much money the project is, specifically what the project is doing, if it's a competitive grant, if it's a discretionary grant or formula grant, things of that nature. So again, these are kind of very big picture, and I don't really expect them to help you day in and day out. But as you kind of look around, you can get a feel for the different projects that are in your area. And then you can ask people, you can talk to prime contractors and say, hey, this is coming down. What about this? Like I said, this next program here, the Connections Marketplace. This is actually incredibly useful, and I highly recommend everybody look into this. So it's actually a resource that's provided by the US DOT, not the state. Historically, small businesses always have a difficult time building relationships with federal agency representatives and prime contractors. I hear that all the time as firms are saying, how can I get in touch with primes? How can I build that relationship that are so important? Through this Connections Marketplace, it's an online community, and you can actually bridge the gap. They do team building, they have conversations, Q&As, decision making. All these higher up officials do these roundtable conversations, and they even have matchmaking sessions. So some of the things that are offered is that you can be paired up with a mentor. You can have these breakout teams where you talk about the industry or projects or struggles that you're having. And there's a lot of high up officials and contractors who are present. So they're constantly brought in. It's a great resource. It's a great opportunity to just have the opportunity to go face to face with somebody and build those relationships and ask those questions. So the last event they did was on Tuesday. So if you go to that link, it's going to take you to an events page, and you just want to keep periodically going to that to see when they're advertising the next event. And you just sign up for it. It's free. You can meet contractors, you can meet government officials, you can meet you'll learn so much more. So again, knowledge is power. It gives you that competitive edge when you're bidding on projects and understanding what's coming down the line. The Tribal Technical Assistance Program, that's kind of similar to the Apex accelerators. It's just another resource that you can go to learn about projects and planning and development, things that are happening in tribal communities. Apex accelerators, the one next to it, that's available for everybody. That's kind of like your SBA. They used to be called PTAC, so if you're familiar with that term, now they're called Apex accelerators. Free resource, you can go there, talk about your business. They do small business development, industry trends. There's a lot of different resources. And the one at the bottom here, the state fact sheets, when you go to that link, it's going to take you to the US DOT website again. And it actually has all 50 states, and you can click on each one and read about your state in terms of the funding from the bill itself. So it'll tell you how much money is being allocated to your state, what projects are being funded, and how much money is going to them. So you can see all like the surface transportation projects, but it'll actually go into EV vehicles and things like that. So it's really interesting to kind of go in there and see like what's happening in my state. So basically these are all like the different resources available to you. So this is a good quote. Business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming. Richard Branson said this. And that's what this is. This is just going to be opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And, getting involved with the resources you have available, talking to the people, identifying what areas of your business are up next for development, taking the time to actually put money and time and effort and resource into developing those areas is only going to prepare you for these projects. It's going to make you more competitive. It's going to make you more lean. It's going to make you more profitable. So you can't just get so bogged down in doing the day-to-day, doing all the day-to-day work, because you're not going to be focused on how you can grow your company. And that's really what's super important. So obviously the bill is going to have a significant impact on the country. By investing in infrastructure, the bill creates more jobs, it improves public safety. It's going to modernize the country's infrastructure to meet the demands of the 21st century. And it's undoubtedly one of the most, if not the most, substantial infrastructure investments in the country's history, and a testament to the superior power of bipartisan cooperation. It's really cool. There's a lot to it. I know that's a lot of information. If you want more specifics, if you have any specific questions, we could talk about it. If there's certain areas of your company you're saying, I don't know where to start, I don't know what I need to do, what should my priority be, always feel free to reach out to us. We can help point you in the right direction. We do a lot of that management consulting, as some of you may know, and it's free to any certified DBE. So that's what we're here for. Use us, use your resources, leverage your competition, leverage your network, and just keep constantly striving to better your company and take advantage of the opportunities that are out there. So does anybody have any questions right now? Not seeing any. So I hope this information was useful. Like I said, you'll get the slides so you can kind of review them again at your own pace and, take in the information as you will. If anything comes up, never hesitate to reach out to us. And thank you for attending today. And I hope everybody has a great day and a great weekend too. Thanks.